Welcome, everybody, to our Friday morning programming. We're going to begin this morning with a presentation on mental health and well-being. And here we have some counselors from Morningstar Counseling. We have Dr. Patty, I'm going to say it wrong, but Cerda-Lizarraga? Lizarraga? I can't roll my R's. And Kyly Baxter. And so let's welcome our guests and give them our kind attention this morning. Thank you.
Clapping. Yeah. Well, thank you for this introduction. This morning, we're going to be speaking to you about mental health and well-being, but we're going to start by giving you some statistics about higher education in Native communities and also some mental health statistics in Native communities, just to kind of get an idea of some of the issues and challenges that the community faces in these two areas. And just to kind of warn you a little bit, the numbers sometimes can be a little bit alarming, but it's important for us to be able to know, what researchers have found, and so that we can work with that information and then give you, recommendations or ways to kind of be able to gain skills to kind of avoid falling into some of those issues that do happen in the community. So for higher education, Native American and Alaska Natives make up less than 1% of both U.S. undergraduate and graduate students. And for this reason, because of the small sample size, sometimes they're left out of big research studies. So then there's not a lot of information about, how are Native students doing in college. There's very limited research compared to other groups. So I think here there's an issue of sample size, but, researchers have to kind of make it a goal to then do a different type of study to be able to still see what's going on, because that shouldn't, really be an excuse for not to include individuals in these larger studies. But this also makes it that Native students then are often the most underrepresented group in higher education, and they're less likely to have a family member that's attended college. So that can be challenging for students when they come to a university. As far as degree attainment, in 2013, 41% of Native Americans that were first-time, full-time students and attending a four-year college completed their degree within 6 years. And so if you compare it to just the overall student population, their completion rate was 63% for that same time period. So you could see that's definitely different, or much less for Native American students. As far as associate's degree, in the last for Native youth 25 years and older, between 2010 and 2019, there was an increase in how many associate's degree were received. So it went from 21% to 25%. So that was a positive thing that happened. And then also we wanted to touch base on something that obviously has affected all of us, which has been the pandemic with COVID-19 and seeing its effect on Native communities. And so as we know, in Native communities, they were very much more disproportionately affected by COVID-19. And the CDC now has data to show that if you are Native and were in one of these communities, you were 3.5 times more likely to be affected by COVID-19 compared to non-Hispanic white counterparts. So definitely it impacted the communities at a greater level. And this has just other effects, in a larger scale in the communities themselves and individuals, and obviously in their education. So overall, there was a drop in enrollment for college enrollment between 2020 and 2021. So enrollment overall went down 5.9% from those years, from spring 2020 to spring of 2021. But for Native American, enrollment went down 13%. So again, they were impacted more by COVID, even in the enrollment during that time where it was really high, or the numbers were really high. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so just to give some stats on mental health in Indigenous communities, this was taken, I want to say about 2018, 2019, but of the 1.3% of the population that identifies as Native American, 19% reported having a mental illness in the last year, which is over 827,000 people, which can fit Major League Baseball stadiums twice on the East Coast. That's a very large proportion, and that's very scary to see. But when we think about a lot of the challenges that are being faced, it makes sense. So what we want to talk about is what are some other challenges that we're experiencing, so that then we can, again, like Patty mentioned, address them and create programs and support so that we can tackle these and decrease these numbers. So 56% of Natives are more likely to die of alcohol-related causes than non-Natives. They have a 2 times higher suicide rate, and they're 2.5 times more likely to experience distress. So we just want to keep those numbers in mind as we're moving forward. We are going to talk about a lot of skills and support, so we'll get more positive. But we just want to show just those stark numbers to show really just how important it is to have that support system and have those skills.
Yeah. So one of the things that we can definitely discuss is in terms of mental health and well-being would be how individuals, handle stress. And just kind of talking about stress, because, all individuals will experience stress, especially too whenever you're going to do anything that's new or you're in a transitional period. So, coming to college or transferring into a 4-year university could be something that can be very stressful. But in general, people will deal with stress in different areas of their life. So, so we ask this question of like, what is stress, right? So stress has both a psychological and a physical response in your body. And so sometimes this occurs whenever you have to adapt to these changing conditions. And this could be, the change could be real, like it's really happening, like you're actually moving homes or you're going to a new school, but it could also be perceived. So if you think something is changing or you perceive something has changed, that can also cause stress. And the other thing to know about stress is that stress is necessary and unavoidable. Everyone will experience some kind of a stress in their life, right? And so having stress is a normal part, and it's healthy because it helps us to stay motivated and productive and challenged. So when we have this stress, it helps us attend to those things that are important, right? So like if we have work to be at 9 a.m, we need to have that little stress in the morning when it's 8 and you're like, I have to be out of the door by this time because that's what keeps you, moving. That's like a good type of stress, right? But then there's other types of stress when it starts to becoming more overwhelming, and then it becomes detrimental to then your health and your well-being, right? So again, the way we respond to stress, like I said earlier, has different components. So there's a cognitive component, which affects, how you're thinking. Are you able to concentrate? Or it affects, like you might feel like you're all over the place in your mind, what we call like scatterbrain. It could affect your emotions, right? So if you're experiencing a lot of stress, you might find yourself to be irritable, frustrated, and then also have some like depressed mood. Physiologically, sometimes individuals, when they're under stress, will experience like things in their body. They can really feel it. So you'll have stomach aches, you'll get headaches, you feel tension in your muscles. So this is all part of that response. Behaviorally too, individuals might see changes in their sleep pattern where, they might not be able to fall asleep. They might see changes in their appetite, pattern, or just eating pattern changes. They're eating differently than usual. And sometimes people then will resort to using drugs or alcohol to alleviate some of that stress. So then what are some of the signs when you do have too much stress, right? So if you start to feel that you're experiencing anxiety or panic, if you're constantly feeling this pressured or hurriedness, if you feel like there's moodiness, if you have problems sleeping, if you experience chest pains. And then again, like we touched on, any negative way of coping. So if you're smoking, if you're overeating, again, like we talked about, drinking, using drugs, and then you feel like sadness, that would be when it starts getting too much stress for you. And here I like to look at this stress and performance curve, because like I said earlier, there are optimal points of stress, good stress, and then when it's bad, right? So if you look at the curve, you see that when you have like little or no stress, it's like the green area. So you're very relaxed, there's nothing coming on, nothing that you have to attend to in that moment. So that's like you're underloaded in terms of the stress, right? Where you want to be is more the optimal stress section, where the one that's in yellow, because that's what gives you going, motivated, you want to do something. When it starts getting too much is like the second half of the curve, where it starts getting more like on the orange side, because this can start leading to then too much stress, and you might feel exhausted, tired all the time. And then the last one would be the red part, the end, and that's when you start feeling more like you're burned out, like you just can't, go forward because you're too stressed out. And so we don't want you to get to that point. So that's kind of how stress and performance works.
So I'm going to talk about then part of mental health and well-being is being balanced and having that school life balance, which can be really, really difficult. But when we think about the benefits of having that balance, we're going to notice a lot more improvement in like your academics, because if you're managing your time, you're going to be more focused in class, you're going to have time to study, and you're going to see your grades improve overall. You're going to learn a lot more. But you're also going to notice stronger relationships, because that means that you've made time for your family, you've made time for your children, your friends, and that overall can really just improve your health and your well-being, because you're healthy, you're taking time to sleep, eat, drink water, do those things that are important to your wellness, but you're present, so you're here. So if you're stressed out and you're in class, mind is somewhere else. You're not even paying attention. You might be thinking about something that's happening at home, in the community, with your family. That's difficult to shut that off when you've got other stressors going on. So when we can have that balance, we can make time to kind of address those and deal with those head on, so they're not coming in to other times where you need to have your focus elsewhere. There are some challenges to that though, and that might be being a first-gen student. If you're the first in your family to go to college, it's hard to figure out what that balance is. I was a first-gen student, and I remember I didn't know how to manage my time. My first day of school, I went to school at 8 o'clock in the morning. I didn't have class till like 3 p.m. because I didn't know what to do with myself. And learning to find what those academic supports are, so that then if you do need help, where do you go to? Because it takes time to research that online, to find the right people, to ask for help. And that can take a while if they're connecting you to all these other people to help you. Financial need, it's hard to have that balance if you have to work. Sometimes it's hard when professors don't understand, where you're like, well, I need to go to work because I have to pay my bills and I have to support my family, but you also have to pass your classes. And having that cultural support and understanding, if there's a funeral, I had to explain to my professor, I got to be gone for 5 days, not 24 hours. Like, I need more of an extension on my paper, because I'm not going to have time to get this done in the time frame that you want me to get it done. So these are some challenges to potentially expect, especially if you're in a 2-year or 4-year university, but know that there are benefits and there are ways to get over that. And one of those is how do we cope with that stress then? So we know what the benefits are. We know what some of those challenges are. How do we deal with it? And the first thing is you have to deal with it directly. The longer you wait, the worse it's going to get. You have to be active, because these stressors, they don't disappear. The other part of that is you want to make sure you have healthy stressors, or healthy responses to stressors, because it's easy. It is easy just to go right in and do those things that feel good, but they're only temporary solutions. We have to find something that you can be consistent, and that's going to help you long lasting. And you want to be mindful of how you're monitoring that stress, because it might be easy. One day you might be in that red and one day you might be in that green. So you want to be mindful of where you're at each day. So we have some questions that you might want to ask yourself, and like, where is this difficulty coming from? Where's my stress coming from? How am I feeling right now? Take that second to actually feel what you're feeling and think about how it's impacting you, because that's also going to help you kind of be mindful and think about, what am I doing to deal with it? Like, am I just sitting with it and it's taking control of me? Am I actually finding ways that, if I do this, it works, but if I do this, it doesn't? That helps you craft what is going to work for you, because it's going to be different for everybody. And it's also going to help you figure out what are those new ways that you can cope with it. Because if the way you're dealing with it, you're like, this is not working, how am I going to find a new thing? How am I going to figure out what that is? Because it takes time. These aren't easy things. They take time to develop and time to figure out for what's actually going to work and be helpful to you. I think that's
There. I realized I was blocking.
spots. Yeah.
Yeah, I was blocking the screen there earlier. Yeah, so as Kyly was mentioning, the way we deal with those stressors, we want to find healthful ways to deal with those. So this is kind of where self-care comes in. And what we mean when we talk about self-care is being able to take care of yourself, body, mind, and spirit, So I kind of wanted to know if you've heard that term self-care, and what does that look like for you? So if anyone wants to share, what do they do for self-care?
So keep up on your hygiene and stuff like that. And like for me, it's think about self-discipline, self-care. Because like I put together because I study self-discipline, myself, like make sense. I was self-care, just care about myself, like myself. I just care about myself physically, and like mentally, make sure I'm thinking right. I'm not stressing out my like self-care. I know what to do to make sure I'm not stressing. Like keep my mind on stuff, like stay in the books, go to school or something. Oh, it's really like a lot of things I can do for self-care. Self-care is just self-care. Like for me, it's just staying in the books. For me, it's self-care. That's the only thing that keeps me for my well-being. Just staying in the books. Other than that, I'm stressed out.
For me, when I was going to school, my self-care was allowing myself to have fun. Like when you're in school, you do not have to be crunching every moment of every day. I set aside one day a week, and like, this is the day that I am having fun. This Saturday is the day where I was like, I'm not going to do any homework, and I'm going to manage my time well enough during the rest of the week to have fun. Otherwise, I'm going to go crazy.
Yeah. Anyone else would like to share what they do for their self-care?
I have me time. I have work here. I have work. I have food.
Yeah. And I think the important things to remember is just that, your self-care compared to someone else's might look different, and that's okay, because we all have different needs and different interests, right? So like when you talked about your self-care, like my Saturday was my fun Saturday, and I did not want to do schoolwork, and that worked for you, and that kind of kept you motivated the rest of the week. And there might be someone else that might need, like you say, a little bit of me time, and that could be like 15 minutes, especially if you have children and stuff. I'm gonna drink this tea, I'm gonna have this coffee for 15 minutes. Yeah. So you appreciate those little moments, right? And for other people, they might want to have like maybe 2 days where they give themselves 2 hours to go somewhere with a friend or go eat with a friend or something. So it can look different for different people, and just knowing that. The other kind of helpful way to try to alleviate some of that stress is to try to do anything that helps you relax, right? And this is sometimes things that individuals are not necessarily used to doing. So here we're going to talk a little bit about some relaxation strategies that you might want to consider trying, especially when you do have a few minutes, because they really impact your health, and you could see yourself feeling better in a short amount of time, right? So if now that everyone usually has access to a computer, in YouTube, you can find great examples and kind of guides you through deep breathing exercises. So if you on YouTube go and you put deep breathing, you'll find some, and they're like a few minutes long. Progressive muscle relaxation is one that I like to do. And in that one, it's just guided, and it usually the person that's narrating will talk about, you can do it sitting down or laying down, but they'll work different areas of your body. So like you'll tense different parts of your muscles, like if starting from the top of your head down to your feet or the other way around, but you're kind of tensing up and then releasing, tensing up and releasing. And they're walking you through this with like some kind of calming sound music. And you'll notice that after doing that, like it almost feels like, at least for me, my shoulders kind of feel like they drop because I didn't realize how much tension I was holding up here when you're busy and go, go, go. And I think the good thing about this again is that you can find some of those videos that are, 10 minutes long, 8 minutes long. So you don't really need to like have, an hour to do this. So sometimes people, are afraid to try things or they think it might take too long, but I'd encourage you to give it a try. There's also visualization. So if you're a person that can like picture things and that's more gratifying for you, you might want to try that. Other things to try is like being aware of like your self-talk. So a lot of times we talk to ourselves in our mind or tell ourselves things, and paying attention to what we're telling ourselves, because sometimes it can be very critical. So trying to encourage to put a more positive self-talk and encouragement, like you're your own cheerleader type of thing. So when you're going to do something that's hard, kind of tell yourself like, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to learn this, give yourself words of encouragement, so you can be your own cheerleader. A lot of people also like to, when they do some self-care, rely on humor. So they'll watch like a half an hour, like funny sitcom or like a comedian or something like that, or just, laughing and humor is important. And it's a good way to also do this. And then other techniques like we talked about is also time management. So like you said, if you're able to manage your time well, then you can make time for these other kind of parts and kind of everything fits in. And then there was that like little funny, they say lavender can reduce stress, and the person's like in a farm, I don't know
It's like a lavender field.
a lavender field. I don't know how to say that. So with stress management strategies, think about how you can build your support system, right? Have someone that in your life that you can go to, that you can talk to, that will listen to you, that you have that person that's there for support. And like Kyly was talking about, sometimes students, I know I was one of those students too, because I'm also a first-gen student, that like was intimidated to go to professors, because I always thought like, oh, they're the professors, they're busy, I'm just a student. But really, when you're in school, the professor, you're taking classes with a professor, it's part of their job to have office hours, encourage you to make those connections with your professors to get to know them and they get to know you. And to be able to just talk to them and ask questions if you have questions, but also like when things are happening in your life that are affecting then the ability for you to meet a deadline, that you're able to communicate that with your professor and not think like, oh, well, I'm just not going to turn it in. Because a lot of the times, if the professor is aware that something's going on, they can work with you, and it doesn't have to mean for you to like not turn in that assignment or lose points on that assignment. But I think it's just a matter of communicating and using them as support as well. The other thing about taking care of yourself is also thinking about like, am I making time to exercise? Can I go for a walk? Can I go for a run, depending on what you like to do? Because physical activity does reduce stress. So it has a positive impact in reducing that. And it also helps improve your mood. The other thing is maybe just trying to avoid caffeine. A lot of us like caffeine because it helps us wake up in the morning. But I think it also can affect you not be able to fall asleep if you have it too late. So understanding how caffeine affects you, or if you hadn't considered that might be actually causing some of the problems for you to fall asleep and that kind of thing, that would be something to consider and watch for. Eating balanced meals, making sure you're getting enough vitamins, and that sort of thing. And then again, with sleep is very important. We talk about it all the time in mental health care because it does affect everything if you're not sleeping properly. And so 7 to 8 hours, you'd want to get to the at least 7. But that's sometimes hard for people to get there. So trying to develop a sleep routine, going to bed, waking up at the same time is usually a good thing because it kind of keeps you in a rhythm. And so that can be challenging too.
So some of those stress management strategies are really going to focus again on like that time management, that school life balance. That in itself is another way of self-caring. So some of those strategies we have are just prioritize, plan, make a to-do list, figure out what needs to be done. And if you're stressed out and everything's jumbled around, you got like 6 things going on, that's going to help you keep it straight. And that's one thing that you can take out of your brain and it's out for you to cross off. That feels good. Sometimes when you get things done, you can cross it off, but also to set realistic goals. And we'll talk about that in a second. Like, what is a realistic goal? And keep it as a routine, because consistency, that discipline, that is very, very important. But also planning out leisure activities, picking a day where this is my day to have fun. This is my time to have fun. Even if you can't do a day, an hour at night, like find something that you can do where you get that emotional load off, where you get to just be light and you get to be free in some way. And that's not avoidance. That's making sure that you have time to have fun, to kind of get that stress off of you and be free from that for a short time. And also assert yourself. It's okay to say no. I know when I was a student, because I was first gen, because I didn't really know what was out there, I didn't want to say no to anything because I was afraid I was going to miss opportunity. I was always afraid I was going to miss something, but I was also afraid, like, if I said no, that mean I couldn't handle it. And I didn't want people to think I couldn't handle it because I had to show that I could go to college. So it's okay to say no, and it's okay to set those boundaries because you have to know your limits. You have to keep that balance to be able to take care of other things in your life that are important to you. So when we talk about goals and those realistic goals, I don't know if either of you have heard of SMART goals, but SMART goals are just an acronym to kind of break down a goal so that then it feels manageable. So the acronym is that it's going to be specific. You want to include as many details as you can to say, like, what am I going to do? How am I going to do it? What do I need to do this? What do I need to achieve this goal, so that you've got it all laid out? The other part of that is you want it to be measurable. How am I going to track it? How am I going to know I'm making progress, that I'm, working towards this end goal? Because that's hard if you're working on something. You're like, I don't know if this is making any difference at all. So this is going to help you identify, how am I going to measure this? Am I going to measure it by my grades, by how I feel? What is that going to look like? But also, is it attainable? Is this kind of realistic? If you're going to say, I'm going to study 6 hours tomorrow, and you don't even have time to study for 6 hours tomorrow, that's not a realistic goal. So you want to be mindful of, what do I actually have time to do? What can I actually do? Because it's always, at night, you're like, oh, I'll get it all done. And then you wake up, you're like, I got like 2 things done. Be realistic on what you're going to do, because that's okay. Because it feels like the weight is on our shoulders. We got to get it done now. We got stuff to do, but it's okay to space it out. And that's what these SMART goals are going to help you do, is space it out so that you can get them all done. And we want it to be relevant. So is this goal actually related to what we want to do? Because sometimes it's easy if you're really stressed out, you're like, I'm going to clean up the living room. That is not related to anything you actually have to do today. So make sure it's relevant, but also that it's time bound. When are you actually going to get it done? That doesn't have to be a hard stop. Like, if I don't get it done by 3 months from now, I failed. Just reevaluate where you at. Maybe you need more time, but it's going to help you keep track of those and make that progress. And the other part of this is a wheel of self-care. And you're going to notice, especially those ones that are in like that yellow-orange color, saying no, asking for help, setting boundaries. Those are all things that we've talked about related to self-care, but they're also part of time management because they kind of go hand in hand. So when you are saying no, when you're managing your time, you're caring for yourself as well. So it's not one or the other. That's kind of like 2 sides to a coin. So the first thing you want to do in managing your time is, what is Yeah, sure. Kind of move out of the way.
We can send you the presentation to who would I send it?
You'll have access to the presentation later, but if you want something on your phone, it's a daily reminder.
Yeah, daily reminder. Those are on TikTok too. Those are nice. Daily reminder. Yeah. So the first thing is, you want to figure out, what is important to me? What do I value? What are my responsibilities? Just lay it all out. And we're actually going to do an activity where we do that. so that you can see where is my time actually going, because that's how things kind of fall to the side. You forget about them. We can see visually everything we got to do. The other part of that is you want to create a study plan or a calendar. Start listing out everything you got to do, when it's going to happen. And that might be a family calendar. If you got kids, it's not just you, it's other people, and you got to work it all together. Avoid distractions, put the phone down, turn the TV off, turn the music off if you have to, tell your friends you can't hang out, do what you need to do to try to avoid those distractions so you have time to get things done, and build that network of support. If you've got kids, do your homework with your kids. If you got family that are, going to school with you or friends, like do it together, support each other through that, and build that network of who can I go to ask for help, if that's staff, professors, anybody in the community, and ask for help. It can be scary to ask for help because, again, just sharing my experience, I was afraid to ask for help because asking for help means I was having trouble and I couldn't manage it. And I was the only one. I was by myself, my family, no idea what was going on. So it was on me to kind of step up and take that responsibility and say, I am going to ask for help. I got to figure this out. Take breaks, rest. That is part of self-care. You have to have breaks in there because you're just going to run yourself down to the ground. And if you don't take that break, your body's going to take that break for you. And you have to learn to say no. You don't have to apologize for it. You don't have to give excuses for it. Just say no. Do what feels most comfortable to you. And know that when you say no, you're doing it for a reason. You're not just saying no to say no. There's something else that you need to get done. So when we think about, you keep saying find support. Where do I find this support? What does that look like? I listed some examples from UNL just because that's what I know about but you're going to find quite a few of these at really whatever college or university that you go to. So the health center, oftentimes they have a counseling center. So UNL has what's called CAPS, that's counseling and psychological services. There's often wellness centers, student organizations. If you think of like the rec center, if you have a student union or student affairs, Unite on campus. I think you guys heard from them at one point. That's a great group. You find people who are like you, who can support you, who have similar goals, but also other academic support offices, student support services. I think LPTC has a student support services office. UNL has OASIS, which is academic success and intercultural services. Tutoring centers, the library, there's people there to help you. Student services with disabilities, diversity and inclusion, there's tons of offices out there meant to help you, and they don't exist to just exist. They're there for you to go and ask for help and get information. Questions? How are we feeling? Yeah.
I'm going to check to see if our online person has any questions.
Yep.
We actually have to turn our microphone back on to hear her.
Okay.
Where's Morningstar Counseling at? I feel like I've seen it since somewhere.
Not in Sioux City. We're actually going to talk about it. We have quite a few different places where we're at. So
I just seen the logo somewhere.
Mhm.
All right, you can ask. Tara, do you have any questions online? I'll ask her to unmute.
No, I'm just kind of listening. As far as mental health and all that, I'm already in a program.
Great. Thank you, Tara.
Uh-huh.
Sure, since we have to mute ourselves.
okay.
It's
good. Slideshow. Present. Oh my goodness.
Will it go back to the beginning?
We'll go back to the beginning.
Okay.
No. Okay. So we're going to do an activity. So we might start it with you and then we'll help him when he gets back. Do you need another piece of paper? Do you have like a backside? You got that one? Perfect. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to do this activity real quick. Okay, we got time. And it's essentially going to help you kind of map out everything that you use your time and energy for. I'll give you another piece of paper if you need one. And then, yeah. And then we're going to talk about how are you actually spending your time, but what are you getting back out of it? So we'll see it all as a visual, and then we'll decide if we need to make any changes, or I guess you can decide that. But what I'll have you do first is just write your name in the middle. That's you. We're going to center you. And now around your name, I want you to start writing down those different things that you value, that you spend time on, responsibilities. Where does your time and energy go? So I listed just very broad examples on here, but like exercise, family, friends. I like to read. I have to study, movies. I'm a dog mom. My dog's like my baby. I work. You can put like, if there's certain hobbies you have, like if you like to bead or if you like to, I don't know, do Zumba, I don't know, just anything that you like to do. Yeah. If you like to cook, if you like to paint or knit, if you go on walks, if you have to, take children to school, if you babysit, if you support other family members that you have to take care of, all those things that take up some time of your day, that can be on average, that can also be things you want to make time for that you just don't make time for right now. So I'll just give you a couple minutes to start listing those out. Whenever you're ready, just let me know. We'll kind of move on. All right, so now I want you to draw arrows going out from your name towards those things. And I want you to draw a solid line arrow if you use a lot of your time and energy on that. And I want you to do a dotted arrow if you do just like some time and energy. So straight lines, regular lines, for lots of time and energy, dotted lines for just a little bit of time and energy. All right. And now what you're going to do is at those things, you're going to draw your arrow going back towards yourself. And you're going to do the same kind of rule. If you're getting a lot out of that, you're going to do a solid line. But if you're only getting a little bit out of it, you're going to do a dotted line. So for example, on mine, I put a lot of effort into work, but I'm getting a lot back out of work. I'm getting experience. I'm getting a paycheck. But when I think about my friends, I'm not putting a lot of time into my friends right now, but I get a lot out of it. I get support. I get, fun, other things that are important to me. But when I look at movies, I put a lot of time and energy because I like to watch movies, but I'm not getting anything out of that. So it's going to help you start to see where are you actually putting your time and what are you getting back out of it? And do we need to take time from other things or add time to more things? All right. Go ahead and take a look at yours then. Now that you kind of got your arrows down, what are you noticing? Are there areas where you're putting maybe a lot of time in that you're not really getting stuff back out? Are there areas where you're not putting any time in where maybe we need to make some changes? How are you feeling about it? Yeah, and that's important to notice. Like when you're feeling tired, you're like, why am I so tired? It's like, oh, I actually got a lot going on. That's why I'm tired. Or making sure like that you're taking care of yourself. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and maybe look at some of those, some of those are kind of hard where like, well, I got to put a lot of time in. I might not get a lot back out of it, but I know I have to put a lot of time and energy here. But are there some areas where maybe you can cut back some? Is there anything that maybe, I think I'm doing a little too much here. I don't really need to do that much. I can bring back some. And that's where we want to have that balance between like indulgence and self-care. Self-care is more of that discipline, and it's, easy to indulge and spend a lot of time in things that maybe we need to balance out and have more in that moderation.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
I know what I struggle with is when I have free time and I'm doing something fun, I know it's for me to balance that stress, but I also have a lot of guilt doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you have anything to talk about in terms of like trying to forgive yourself for having fun and like getting over that guilt because you're like, oh, I should be doing this, I should be doing this, but I feel bad because I feel like I'm wasting my time, but it's also for my health. So like it creates this really tumultuous kind of headspace.
I've always, I think about like that hustle culture. Like if you've got the time, it's time to grow. Like there's always something you could be doing. I like to think back to self-care and say, this isn't like laziness. This isn't avoidance. This is self-care. And this is I like to put it back. Like this is going to help me achieve something else that I want to do. Like it's important that I have fun now so that I know I can be focused tomorrow at work and I'm not stressed out. So I like to put it towards a goal. Like this is actually helping me work towards a goal. And that makes me feel less guilty about spending that time. But I don't know, Patty, do you have
Yeah. And I think, it reminds me of like, when I talked about like, what are you telling yourself or what are the thoughts that you're having? So like for you being able to identify like, when I find myself doing something fun, I sometimes feel guilty, right? And so then again, reminding you, like kind of like what Kyly was saying, reminding yourself like, no, this is part of my plan. This is part of my time management, because I worked hard, all these other days. So yes, I deserve this time off because, it's for my health, my self-care. It's what's going to make me be productive the rest of the week. So kind of reminding yourself like, because there's a reason why you have that like Saturday fun day type thing that you were talking about. And so I think that challenging or like recognizing what you're feeling and then really kind of spending some time like working through that and saying like, okay, but I've worked hard these other, 6 days, so I deserve a break. And that's okay.
And you might go back to some of those questions that we asked earlier, like, why is this making you feel stressed? And really ask yourself, is this something that I actually need to do today? Is this something that needs done today? Or am I feeling the pressure that this is approaching? But I know I've got, like that plan and that schedule, like really just going back to what Patty said, like addressing this is part of your plan. This is part of your goal and your time management. Like this doesn't happen now. And remind yourself, this doesn't need to be a problem now. Though in your brain, you're like, nope, that test is coming up 2 months from now. We're stressing right now. It's like, no, we're not stressing now. We have time. We have a plan. We're going to be okay.
So earlier, I think you had asked, where's Morningstar? So Morningstar has an office here in Lincoln on 70th. So we have an office there with our providers. But we also have an office in Walt Hill. It's right across from where they're building that new skating. They're building a skating.
Like a little skate park.
Like, what is it called?
Yeah.
The building for Morningstar, the building is white.
That was blue.
What color is it? It's in Walt Hill. It's right across from the park.
Yeah.
And they have a skate. They just started building like.
It's like down the street from the school.
Yeah, and down the street from Walt Hill. The school.
It's on Main Street.
Yeah.
Well, it's right along Main Street.
On Costello. And then we also have an office at a Little Priest at LPTC in the basement. We're there, actually me and Kyly are there on Tuesdays she's there on Tuesdays, I'm there on Thursdays from 10 to 3. But some of our other providers also go to Walt Hill and to Winnebago and to Omaha Nation Public School. And then through NICC, we also offer services, but those are through telehealth because most of the students are students that take online classes. So those are all our locations. And did I forget to add anything?
Yeah, I'll add in like, even if you aren't able to do in person, we do have some Zoom and virtual opportunities as well. It just depends on, if you're seeking services and what that looks like. So
yeah. So if ever you want to seek services with us, our contact person for like starting the process would be to email Cynthia at morningstarcounseling.com. You could go to our website too, and her information is there. And so you would just email and say you're interested in services. They would send you a packet they would call you and ask you a few questions and then send you a packet of information to get started. And once you turn that in, then they'll, put you with a counselor that works with that will be working with you. So that's kind of how it works. But yeah, that's all we had for you today. So any other questions?
That's correct. It's free for the students, right?
Yes. If you are a student at NICC or at LPTC, you get services that are available for you and you don't have to pay for them. So typically, people come in, like if you are having any type of difficulty, if the stress, like, how we talked about when it starts getting to that like red part of the curve where you're starting to feel like some of those symptoms where you're feeling overwhelmed or things like that, or any other, issues. And sometimes people undermine their own, like whatever they're going, like it's not that bad, and we actually encourage people that the best time to go to counseling is actually before it's a crisis, because you still have planned to avoid getting into a crisis situation by noticing the signs early on. So when you start seeing that something is impacting you on a day-to-day basis and it's interfering with your ability to do your work, to do the things that you need to do, then that's a good time to go. You don't have to wait until it's like super, super bad. So for all sorts of reasons, we see different people, like because they're wanting to manage their time better, because they're feeling a lot of stress, because they're starting to feel down, or they're feeling really anxious for a lot of things. But yeah, well, thank you for having us today. We really enjoyed coming in and spending this time with you. And then we brought you something from Morningstar, a water bottle, and I think a little stress ball.
So thank you so much for coming and talking to our students and for providing the services. We really appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.